Spanish and Italians are both Europeans, but they have their different cultures, they have different history, different beliefs, different morals, different customs. That's what makes them an ethnic group, so it's mixed ethnic. So if you come from the same people, yeah, so basically if you come from the same people but you have slight differences, that's how it becomes mixed ethnic, okay? Well, I think this is the last slide now. This is the thing, this is a classical case of showing the form of schizophrenia amongst most African Caribbeans of who they are, what they should be. Now, obviously prior to 440 BC, any person who came from Africa was known as an Ethiopian. Why was it Ethiopian? Because the word Ethiopian is a Greek word which means dark face or burnt face. So anyone who came from Africa was an Ethiopian. That's what Ethiopian means, burnt face. Then eventually, when the Romans took over Africa, around about 140 BC, things started to change. And all of a sudden, the word more started to be used. Now, we do start to see that the word more will start to be used toward black Christians within Europe. So we know that the word more comes from the word meaning black, dark, this type of thing. Because this is how they turn people from outside their country, okay? But obviously, at that particular time, the Moors were considered people who were bringers of light to civilization. They were considered people that had brought something that Europe never had, like the numeral system, for instance. Yeah, bringing water from the mountains into the cities. Yeah, using gold pipes, fountains, incense burners, these type of things. This is what was introduced into Europe. What else did they introduce into Europe? They introduced, citrus fruits, orange and lemons and limes. Yeah, because Europe at the time Europe had only just come out of the bubonic plague, and they were literally starving to death. The way most people see Africa today, Europe was like that over 550 years ago, in a terrible state. This is why the slave trade was monopolized, and this is why they wanted to take control of the resources so they can sustain themselves. Because this is how Rome sustained itself from Africa. This is why they kept the gates of North Africa open so they can take all the grain out and feed the people in Europe. So Africa was always used as a breadbasket. So this is what takes place, and then all of a sudden, you've got the likes of Christopher Columbus, and then the word Negro starts to become used. But when Negro was written with a small n, not a capital N. Okay? This is what is written as a small n, so it didn't have that significance it should have had. And if you read most history books, you will see a small n. And most people overlook that or realizing that, in theory you should be a capital N. But this is an imposed definition, an external definition. This is something that comes out of the Portuguese and the Spanish languages. The Africans didn't call themselves that. Then we go to the phase of what it was called Creole. Creole actually comes from a Spanish and Portuguese word which means indigenous. The name Creole was actually first given to white people that were born in the Caribbean islands, because the first place of enslavement was the Caribbean, not America. America didn't become the slave port and thing until around about the 1600s. So for the first 2 centuries, it was in the Caribbean islands. This is where slavery first started in the 1440s, okay? So Creole was used for white people. And because they didn't bring much women with them, obviously it was African women they were having children with. So their progeny, which was mixed, was called Creole. And that's how it came. And eventually, because it became so widespread, this form of miscegenation, the word Creole started to take on other connotations, where it was to deal with linguistic expressions, what you call pidgin language or broken English. This is what it means now. Okay? So even the word Creole has gone through certain shifts. Then we find ourselves around about the 1800s, and then we got the word colours. So we're getting closer to what we used to be. Yeah? But that was short-lived. That was lived up right up until the 1930s and 40s. Okay? And then all of a sudden, West Indian starts to be used as a form of identity. Okay? Because Columbus had gone in, he thought he was going, because his intention was to go to India, end up in the Caribbean islands, called India, and they called the people there Indians. And then the African people that came there started to refer themselves as West Indians. okay, where there's not, where it could, where there's none, it's far away from the truth. Then we have Caribbean, which was used. Now, what was ironic, the West Indian, if you read some of the literature which was written in the 1970s, 80s, the word West Indian was used, West Indian boy, West Indian girls, West Indian people. This was used profusely during the 1970s and 80s. And then in 1992 it started to change, and then the word African Caribbean, or Afro-Caribbean, came into play, right? Round about 1992, 93, round about that period, okay? And then obviously, we know the word black. So you can see through people's history that every definition that you see there is being imposed and put upon the people. So naturally, those people are going to be confused within the household. What are they? They have 5, 6, or 7 things to choose from. If you check and look at other communities, for instance, there's a consensus of who they are. The Pakistani, all of them are Pakistani. There's no problem with them. The Chinese, everyone is Chinese. The Arab, they're all Arab. Even in situations where there's a mother and a father, they usually go, in this country, what usually takes place when the child is mixed, it usually goes to the most foreign. The child takes on the most foreign elements of the parents. Never the national, the local element, always the foreign element. Yeah? So usually the mother is usually dismissed in this case. Okay? So this is what's taking place. So I think, yeah?
I would just like to ask, is there any questions? Because we, you know what I'm saying, we still got.
You missed the word Creole, but that's all still.
Creole. Mulatto.
Sorry, mulatto.
I was looking more for, that was more for mixed. I was looking more on the black side, which it was used, and then obviously you shift. But it could have gone on there, but it would have gone into another branch. Yeah.
Apologies for coming late. What's the definition you would be most comfortable with?
The definition for me, I see myself as an African first and foremost, but for referential reasons, I'll say African Caribbean, because that is what the people in this country would know me as. Now, with a lot of people coming over to this country, especially from Afghanistan, they don't know what that means. African Caribbean, Afro-Caribbean. What are you talking about? I have to say I'm Jamaican. And if I say I'm African, they say, no, you're not African. So they recognize it. So even my identity, I have to shift, because there's certain particular mindsets of different people that I live amongst. But me, first and foremost, I see myself as an African, but I'm comfortable with African Caribbean. I am comfortable with that, yes. All I want to say.
Might I suggest Afro-Saxon might be a useful terminology?
Afro-Saxon?
Yeah.
To some degree, yeah, that could go on pretty well, because I have got Germanic ancestry in my blood, yeah.
I have a suggestion regarding Afro. It's
Yeah.
hairstyling. Yeah? Afro is hairstyle.
Yeah.
So that's first and foremost, yeah?
Yes.
We don't say Caucasian and we don't refer to them as cool Caucasians.
Yeah.
But they got skinhead or whatever. You see?
Yes.
So Afro don't come into not with me, it's just a hairstyle.
Yeah.
I don't deal with that. I'm African Caribbean, but like yourself,
Yeah.
I'm African from and I've got like Marcus Garvey said.
Yeah.
That's it, full stop.
Right. Okay.
I just want to applaud you for your lecture.
Okay, thanks for that, yeah.
First and foremost, I thank you for it. Like you said, your Jamaican heritage, yeah? Jamaican heritage, yeah? Well, Jamaicans was never slaves anyway, as in like when they first landed in Jamaica.
That's right, that's right.
Arawak Indians, yeah, as we all know that.
Yeah.
So Nanny and the Maroons, yeah, the four hearts. So we was never slaves. Yeah, we landed there before for our rights even to this day, yeah.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, Jamaican people, yeah, we're always taught about Africa, especially Rasta.
Yes.
Always taught about Africa first and foremost, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well said, Nat.
you know,
Yeah.
we don't have to kind of like hinder around that. We're African because, like you said, Chinese have China, you know,
Yeah.
Europeans is European, black people. It's only water what
Yeah.
divides us. You know what I mean? So first and foremost, it's African. And you're talking about the homes and identity and this, that, and the other, yeah? That's where we have to aim to show the kids first and foremost that it's our African heritage.
That's right.
Yeah? And anything after that comes second.
Well, this is one of the problems now. The problems that we used to go through, the East Africans are now going through. Because it's hard to be an African. We know what it's like
Yeah.
to be an African, you know, going to school and stuff. Now they realize what it's like, you know, obviously maybe 30, 40, 50 years later, yeah, but they are now going through this conflict now, and they're disassociating themselves from the Africanity or the Africanness.
But even the media portrays, because the media is the big player in all this. We're talking about gangs and this, that, and the other. It's the media what dismantles the family.
Yes.
Yeah? Television, newspapers.
Yes.
There's a constitution in the American agenda, in their constitution, when slavery was up and running, they put it in there, take away the language, break up the family.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
And to this day, that constitution, because we all follow America, everybody follows America. Babylon, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They follow America, you know what I mean? That is Rome, you get what I'm saying? So that's just handed over, you know, so.
Okay, thanks for that.
So, now go ahead. He's next.
Right. I was going to ask about definition, because you spoke about definition imposed by other people.
Yeah.
So what about definition imposed by African people on themselves?
Well, isn't
See where I'm coming from?
give me an example. What do you mean by Africans imposing a definition on
Black
themselves?
people that imposing definitions on themselves, because you know, back in the back in the 60s, etc. Black is beautiful.
Yes.
Right. So isn't that some form of imposing?
Yeah, this is an imposition, yes, because that's why I got it. There's an imposition because it doesn't come from our linguistic expression. If you look at most of the people, you know, which most of the diasporans which live in the Caribbean or this country, in the Americas, they come from West Africa, and black was never an expression. They used it, but that was not their identity. It was just to say that someone had a particular skin color. When they met someone who was lighter than them, that's all it basically was. Yeah, but this is one of the problems where, if you look at all these definitions in front of you, these are all imposed. All of them are imposed. Not one of them comes out of the true historical legacy.
What I'm asking, are they all